Thank you, Vincent, for joining. Good evening. Please, as you join, let me know where you're joining from. If you can just type where you're joining from, and also type any comments that you want me to note as you join. Thank you. Hope you had a beautiful day. Okay, thank you. Thanks for joining. Thank you for joining. Yes, I'm the special one. Thank you for joining. I'm going to start right away. And I just wanted to check. Okay, I think I still have about 2 more minutes by the time I'm using. So let's just give 2 more minutes. Olayemi, thank you for joining. And as you join, for those of you that are not following me on IG yet, this is the time to follow. So you can just click the follow button right above. And also, I have another page, the Inspired for Impact, which is the other platform, like the foundation that I run. So you can also join Inspired for Impact, which is the platform that we use to for all the activities that we run. We have 1 more minute, and we're going to go right on the dot of 7. Please confirm you can both hear and see me. Please, if you can confirm you can hear and see me, type a note. Let me know that you can hear me clearly and that you can see me. Please, if you can just type a note. Let me know that you can see me. Lolly P, thank you for joining. Can you hear and see me? Vicky, thanks for joining. Can you hear me? Oh, great. I just wanted to be sure. So the volume and the picture is fine. Thanks everyone for joining. So I wanted us to start on the dot of 7. Great. Okay, we're good to go, loud and clear. Thank you for joining. It's a beautiful day. So I was coming back from church. There was this, when we were growing up, there was something, cyclonic rainfall, if I remember correctly. And so everywhere was misty, there was dust everywhere, refuse flying here and there. But I believe that wherever you're joining from, you're safe and you're calm. If you're on the way, if you're on the road, I hope that you practice safe commute. So if you're driving, please be extremely careful, maybe just with your hands free. Don't drive and speak. And for those at home, please ensure that you are in a very conducive environment. So again, thank you, Adiola Livingstone. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Bukola George. Thanks everyone for joining. For as many as I see, you're the early birds, I can still mention your names for now. So thanks everyone for joining. And so we're going to go right in while we expect the others to come. I like to give a background to why we're doing this. But before then, let me just say a word of prayer. Daddy, I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this evening. Thank you for as many that will be listening this evening. I ask, oh God, that as I speak, let there be enlightenment, let there be illumination. And Daddy, I ask that you address everyone's question, everyone's area of concern, everyone's area of need. You will use me to speak to them, and that their lives will be transformed. People will get answers to their questions. People will get insights to dilemmas, and people will know what to do for the next steps they have to take. Thank you, faithful God. In Jesus' name we've prayed. Amen. Okay, so I go right in. Thank you, Sarah Osago, for joining. Thanks. And thanks to everybody who spread this message. There were just a lot of, everywhere I looked on people's status, I was seeing it everywhere. I want to say thank you. And so, to what led to this? I'm going to start with why we're doing this. Typically, we started our Instagram live sessions last year. And then at the beginning of this year, we wanted to do a session at least once a year. So we have the Inspired for Impact platform, where we run Living Inspired series. This is one of them. We also run our Living Inspired book club. We have our annual Inspired for Impact event. And then finally, we have a New Month Prayers that we run. Then on a personal note, I do career coaching conversations with Victoria Iba. So why this topic? So in recent times, especially since the lockdown, I've received a number of questions from a lot of people who are asking, Victoria, what's your thoughts? What are the things there's a lot of dilemma, people are facing a lot of dilemma, and people are wondering, what exactly should I be doing? Should I be staying or should I be leaving? So when you hear that question, stay or leave, most likely your mind will just be on relocation. But this is a lot more than relocation. So I've tagged it under 3 key areas of one, when to start your work or when to go for further studies. And the other is also about when to change, move from one employer to the other. What are the factors that you need to consider? And then finally, should I jackpot, or not? What are the factors I need to consider? What are the questions I need to answer? And so we'll delve right into the first one. So in my days in professional services, I remember that some of the conversations, I would typically have with young professionals. A lot of times I would tell them, so you need to look at your career, you need to look at the path ahead of you. You need to look at the opportunities that you have ahead of you. You need to look at your positioning where you currently are. You need to be sure what's in need for you as much as what's in need for your employer, wherever you are. And so when these questions come to me about, I'm a young graduate, I have the opportunity to go for my master's, what should I do? Is this the right time? Do you think I should work for a while before I go for my master's? People ask all sorts of questions. And, for me, I always say that there's no one size fits all. I always ask individuals, you need to look at your peculiar circumstances. Where are you? Who are you? What are you? Where are you? And why are you asking this question? And so when should I go for my master's? When should I go for further studies? Should I work immediately after school, or should I immediately do my MSc and then, start to gain work experience? But a lot of factors you need to consider. And one of the first factor within the Nigerian context, while I understand that the people that are joining us from different parts of the world, for this question in particular, I want to base it on the Nigerian context, and I'm going to move from there to other contexts. So the very first factor I always advise people, professionals, is the factor of the age. And so we are in an environment where many entry-level jobs, there's a tag of age to it. There's a tag of in fact, increasingly, the age limit is decreasing. So back in the days when I wrote the professional services test, it was 28. It was 28. I don't think any one of the big fours would take 28 anymore. So you had to be 28 or less to join. In fact, even to write or join, you have to be 28 or less. But that's changed now for a number of factors. Can you still hear me, please? Please just type if you can still hear me. Please let me know if you can still hear me. Hello? Oh, great. Okay. So for a number of factors, the visuals might not be so clear, but that's going to be sorted soon. So I always tell them your age is important when you consider those factors. So if you finish, for example, if you graduate at 24 for a number of reasons, maybe the strike actions, or maybe depending on when you had the opportunity to go to get admission into the university, depending on what your age is, you want to consider, what are my options? If I go for my master's or my MBA, or most likely your MSc, because typically you'll be expected to have some years of experience before you can go for, an ideal MBA. And so when you have that consideration, that factor of age, you want to ask yourself, what are the options for me? I go for my 2-year master's, I'm done. At what age? What age will I be at that time? The other thing to also consider, this is speaking from my years of experience as a recruiter and as head of human resources. At that level, rarely, for an entry-level professional, rarely will your MBA or your master's give you an edge. Maybe for a few courses. So for example, back in the days where we have some requirements for people who studied medicine or people who studied law, for some professional courses, we want to say that, okay, maybe if you have an additional degree, it might impact your age. But generally, you don't have those kind of excuses or those kind of leverage or those kind of waivers to say because you went for your MBA, then we want to increase, or you went for your MSc, then we want to increase your age limit for entering. So that's a very, very critical factor to consider. I also tell young professionals that funding is key. And so when I say young professionals, this also affects, applies to everybody. At the time where I'm deciding to go for my master's, I'm looking at this. So after considering the age factor, I'm also looking at what funding I have. So if I'm somebody who, for example, I finish at 21, 22, which is very, very common these days, and then I have most job offers, we say 24, I might want to decide at that point to go for my MSc if I have funding. So I have my parents who have decided to fund my MSc. I've seen a lot of people who've had the opportunity and they say to their parents, no, I'm not ready now, I want to work. Well, there's no, that isn't bad in itself. But if you're a young person, on a personal note, I'm going to ask you to consider a lot of things. And one of the things I'll ask you to consider is that life happens. While we expect that our parents will always be there, what if after 2-3 years, the funding that you had while you were 21, 22 was no longer available? And so what it means for you at that time is that you would have to pay a lot more. And you know what it is if you want to, do your master's outside the country in terms of the cost. And so first you consider your age, you consider the funding you have. And if you're somebody who doesn't have adequate funding, you also want to think about working and saving, And the truth is when you work for a few years, before going for your master's, it gives you an edge. When you come back into the country or you decide wherever you are to continue, wherever you went for your master's to continue, the years of experience you already have will count for you. They will always count for you. So it's like there's an addition you've already built a platform, and then your master's just gives an addition. And be mindful that I'm using the word master's because typically for an ideal MBA, you shouldn't even get an admission into an ideal MBA, without some years of experience. So the regular full-time MBA might say 2 to 3 years, but the executive type of MBA would likely want to do above 7 years, And so if you're an experienced professional, doing your MBA later after you've gained experience is a lot more valuable, because at that time the likelihood or the chances are that you have moved up in your career, you're at a point where you are involved in decision making, you're at a point where you are involved in team management, you are at a point where you are involved in managing others, product leadership or delivery leadership. And so the kind of experiences and the growth and the learnings, the teachings you get from the MBA prepares you for such responsibilities. And for those who are already taking those responsibilities, it just helps you get better. But imagine doing your MBA years before you have to apply that knowledge. I can tell you that there's a lot. It's just like back in the days where everybody, for the youngsters, you might not fully understand this. There was a time where you have to go to a computer center to learn how to use the computer. Unlike now where everybody has, an Android phone, an Apple phone, and then you can do everything. Then you have to physically go register. And then you register, you don't use it for a few months, everything you learned, you've forgotten. But, the ideal time, you need to consider what your age is, what your funding is, and then what exactly where you are in the stage of your career. So if I pick somebody, if I take a case of a young graduate who's 23, 24, and doesn't have funding for maybe MSc outside the country, a graduate like that might want to say, you know what, let me try my chances of getting a job, and then because if I get a job, I work 2 to 3 years. If it's an MSc, professional MSc in my field of endeavor that I want to pursue, then I can go for it. I've saved up some, even if I'm going to get some funding, at least I have something, as a backup. The other reason why working for a few years would help you, will be beneficial. Again, mindful that I said there's no one size fits all. But another reason why working for a few years will help you, because at that time, you understand better where you are. You understand what you really want to do. So this is coming from my years of experience as a HR practitioner. I've recruited people, who started in one field and then ended up in another field. And I'll use, when I speak on platforms like this, I always want to use my personal experience. So I started my career in audits. I started in KPMG, in audit. Well, that is after my stint in the bank, Intercontinental Bank at the time. And then I moved into professional services, started in audit, did close to 2 years, and I knew it wasn't me, and then got an opportunity to move into HR consulting, and then from there into HR practice itself, all in the same organization. So it was just the options I had. When I started, if immediately after leaving school and when I was job searching, I wanted to go for my MSc immediately, I would likely have gone for MSc in geography and regional planning, anything urban and regional planning, because that was the course I studied in school. Or I wanted to now do something in accounting because I was doing audit. But 2 years down the line, I realized that this isn't really me. Sometimes some platforms help us to develop and discover ourselves more, especially in a world where many times, more often than not, people get courses that might not really be them, either for one reason or the other, which can include these are the in courses, or these are the available courses, or these are the things that this is not what I want, but this is what I was given. And so when you go into the world of work, you get the opportunity to learn and to begin to discover who you are. You get an opportunity to see other areas of the business and to grow as you work in other areas of the business. So if you put it together, I always say depending on where you are. And then another question I'd like to ask professionals is, as you ask yourself question, what really is relevant? Do I need a master's, or I can go on with certifications? And so again, at the time I went for my MBA, on a personal note, again, I like to use real life examples. It would have been out of point for me to go for an MSc in human resources after the number of years I'd worked. I'd worked for quite a number of years, in HR, and I had done some certifications, at least 3, 2 international and 1 local, and I'd renewed one of them, 2 of them already, proving that I had the experience. And then I looked at what the MSc in HR would give me. While I'm not saying that there will be 1 or 2 things I will learn, it wouldn't going to be any eye opener. It's not going to be anything unique or any aha, oh, I didn't know this, at that point in my career. So it was only relevant that I go for an MBA, because at that point I was already a team lead. I was a senior manager where I had a team of over 10, between 10 and 12 people reporting to me. I was working with senior leadership in the organization. So I needed an MBA, to restructure my outlook regarding the business and the impact I can make. So what I always say to everybody is that there's no one size fits all. You need to consider where you are as an individual. You need to consider what your particular situation is. So what's your age? What funding do you have? What stage are you in your career? And then is an MSc what you really need, or will a professional certification give you what you need? And then when you say professional certification, it can be anything. It might not necessarily be in your area. So for example, I'm a human resources practitioner. At this level, I have my MBA. I have the main HR programs. I might want to say, because of what I do, I want to get a certification in project management. I just want to do something else that will give me another edge. And you're wondering, oh, Victoria, why not do an MSc? So you do, it will be easier for you to be a PhD. The question is, what really do you want? What's your end plan? What's the end game? What are you looking at after retirement? And I always say this to people every time. Don't think about now. Whatever your plans are, it shouldn't be about the next 2 years. Look at yourself when you're 40. Look at yourself when you're 50. Look at yourself when you retire. What are the steps you would take now that will impact your retirement time positively? What are the things that will give you an edge, in the society after now? So these are things. So every decision you take in your career and every step you take, it's critical. It's very, very important that you consider this thing. So really, I always say, what's the right time? What do you want? What do you want? And then the other question to ask yourself is, how does this increase my knowledge? How does this increase my positioning? How does it increase my chances? If I come out and I say that I have an MSc, in HR after about 15 years experience, and then somebody else has an MBA from a prestigious school. At what point, if they're gonna weigh both of us, which will carry more weight? Again, I'm not going to give you a direct answer, because every situation differs. from the other. So it depends on where you are. And, there's a lot of research you can do, the people. I just wanted to, this session is just to guide you on some consideration that you should put in place before you take a decision or a step like that. And so I'm going to move to the next question. I'm mindful that I'm going to be racing against time. And please let me say this before I move to the next question. First is that if you have question for me here, please do drop on the chat box so that I can pick them and answer. If there's anything that I say that is unclear, please drop on the chat box. I'll pick them, I'll clarify. And then if you're yet to follow me on Instagram, please do follow Victoria Ibah. You can see there, follow me, because you're going to be getting, so that you get live notifications of posts, of career nuggets and tidbits that I'll be dropping. You also follow the page for our foundation, Inspired for Impact, is also on Instagram, that's the platform where we run all the other activities that we run. And so the next question, again, another set of questions that I always get is this: when should I move? When should I make a move? I've been with this employer for a while. When should I make a move? And again, before I go deep into that, I want to ask you that if there's anything regarding the first question that I spoke to that isn't clear, please feel free to drop the question. You'll pick it. If I don't pick it on time, the people that are joining this at the back end, I have quite a number of the team members who will pick your question and send through so that I can address those questions. Okay, the next question is, at what point do I make a move? When is the ideal time? I've been with this employer for 2 years, everybody seems to be moving, or I've been here for 5 years, everyone seems to be moving. I've been here for 10 years, everyone seems to be staying. But should I stay? Should I move? Should I stay or should I leave? And again, just like I said earlier on, everybody's situation is different. Listen, in life, whether you decide to stay or you move, there's a decision you're taking. So the fact that you decide to stay with an employer, it's a choice. The fact that you decide to move from an employment is a choice. So everything on every day, the fact that you decide to get out of bed on a daily basis, it's a choice. You could have decided, let me just sleep for the next more 4 hours. So everything you do on a daily basis, you're making choices. And so when you want to make choices regarding your career, it is critical. Very, very critical. I like to say this to people. There are experiences you will never get to have because of certain steps you didn't take or certain steps you took. But unfortunately, we never get to know those steps. So if you miss some experiences, if you miss some steps you're supposed to take at certain times, and when I say miss, I'm not necessarily talking about leaving not leaving when you should have left. Sometimes it might even be staying and not leaving, at a particular time. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to be saying some things that you should consider before you leave. And the very first thing I have stated here is, what's your discipline? What's your area of experience? And so where are you? What's your practice? What are the level of experiences that are required? What's the norm in your field? So an IT person, maybe it's typical for IT professionals to move from one, depending on what they're doing or depending on the different skills. If I see your profile and I see that you have moved several times, I want to ask, I want to look at it and say, okay, maybe because at the different places there were different skills that were being required, or there were different experiences that you were, bringing on board. But then at the same time, that could also backfire. So the first question is, what's your discipline? What area do you function in? What's the norm? What's the typical thing? And what level of experience is required for you to grow? So I've been in human resources, for example, or I've been in IT. What are the different aspects of IT that is expected? Because as much as people typically move every other time. So you hear, for example, for bankers, you will hear people move to a new organization, maybe a new bank. For example, a new bank might be expanding and getting people from other banks. And then when you try to poach them, they will tell you that, I was due for promotion the next, my promotion was due, so I can't even take the next level. So, they're asking for more. So because of that, a lot of people want to move within that space. They are always moving. But, another thing you need to consider is that in certain organizations, and I'll say this because I've worked in organizations and I've worked at leadership positions, I've worked within the human resources position, there are a lot of nuances. And the first thing is the culture aspect of it. And so it would take a lot more for a new entrant to break into an organization, break into the factors that will make you grow fast in an organization compared to people who have always been there. It will take a lot more for new entrants to break in. So the culture issues, when leadership want to take decisions, they're going to be considering things like who are the people we can always rely on, who are the people we have always known. But then, and I'm not saying that as a new person you can't, a number of times we have seen people, the CEOs being recruited from outside the organization and then coming, to be the head. Recently I learned of, I think it was Airtel Africa, somebody from, one of the leaders in MTN, for over how many years in MTN, became the vice president Airtel Africa. And you would have imagined that somebody within the organization would have been groomed. So it happens. So there are a lot of factors. It depends on the stage in your career. And so I always ask people, first, what's your discipline? The other question you need to consider is, what's the career path where you are? And so for some people, they move just at the brink of where a difference would have happened for them. And so the people who moved at the point where they would have been, given more supervisory experiences, which may or may not result or reflect in the pay. While it may not result in more pay, it enriches your career, it enriches your experiences, it enriches your leadership skills. And then these are factors that you will use in negotiating subsequently. And so let me give you this scenario. You move at a point where you just feel that you're getting this offer and it's just too good to turn down. So an offer is giving you two times, or let's say double what you're earning now. You've worked 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, and then you get an offer from a competitor giving you double what you're earning now. The truth is, while that might be good, chances are, listen, that's why I said, what's your career path where you currently are? Chances are that fast forward another 4-5 years, the persons who stayed. That's why it's important for you to know your environment, know the industry that you work, know the organization you work for. Again, I'm going to repeat what I said at the start. Every career decision you take as a professional should not be focused or based on what you see now. Every career decision any professional takes should not be in the vicinity of the next 2 to 3 years. While people say that it is good to think of the now, it is always important to plan deep and plan far. And so questions around, where will I be in the next 10 years? This step I'm taking now, what impact will it have on my career path in the next 3 years? Again, back to that person who gets a double after 3, 4, 5 years work. That person, and I've seen it happen, I'm not just saying it. I'll give you a typical example of professional services. So somebody who leaves after about 4 years, maybe as a first level senior, leaves to a bank or somewhere else, gets a very juicy offer and decides that, oh, this is the time for me to move. Two things happen. Yes, the person gets that immediate gratification at that time, even though the rudiments of the work you already learned, there are other aspects of the work that you haven't gotten. And so another person stays at that same salary and then stays another 3 years. Progressively, the person moves, because typically at the minimum, except you have performance issues or except the organization is going through financial crisis, at the minimum you move once in 2 years, and many times you move once a year, whatever the promotion is. So in another 3 years, you become a manager. Chances are that by the time that person experiences the jump, if you go into industry, you might not have even experienced a promotion at that time. And so that's why it is critical that as career professionals, you do not just take a decision because of the double offer you're getting at that point or because of the offer. Because the 3 years, the jump into the next milestone can wipe off the 3 years of salaries that you have gotten, that the other person will get. And mind you, those 3 years of salaries, what it does is that, what it means is that you use it to meet your needs at that time. And for people who are not disciplined, every increase they get, their lifestyle increases, rather than for every increase you get, your lifestyle remains the same, such that your increase increases your portfolio of financial investment. But then that's not what I'm going into. So I'm going to focus and stick to career decisions as professionals. So again, you want to ask, what is the career path ahead of me? What are the factors? What's going to influence? Where will I be in the next 2-3 years? Another factor, and again, mind you, I'm not saying that it's not good to move. again, what I'm doing at this point is to ask, to put to you some certain questions that you need to consider. The other question, and I really want to hammer on this, is the pyramid. You know, what's the pyramid and the available space for you? What's the pyramid? What's the available space for you? And so if I work in an environment where I know that there's a milestone for me to hit, but I'm also considering the fact that how many people are going to be there? I have had to make a career decision at a point in my life where, you know, I just giving back to my kids, and I really wanted to move for a number of factors. The first and foremost reason was that I needed more money, and I'm not going to mince words about that. That was the most important reason. I just had kids. My husband and I were initially just, you know, married people for 3 years. We were just both of us, and then the kids came. They didn't come one. We had double. So I knew that yes, I needed more money. But the other two reasons why I knew it was time for me to move was the fact that as much as I enjoyed the work I was doing, we were top heavy. So this was me having spent over 5 years in the organization. We were already top heavy. You know, we had managers. While I knew that I had the capacity to grow, it's a pyramid. There's just nowhere to move to, you know. And looking back, I would tell you that it was one of the best career decisions I have ever made. One of the best career decisions to move at the time that I moved, because immediately I moved, I got exposure into managerial roles. And listen, I did not move to where I wanted to. And I'm going to say this here because it's a learning platform. I moved and I started working in a hospital. You know, it didn't make sense. This is me coming from a professional services background. The hospital had reached out to a group of hospitals, one of the major hospitals in Nigeria group, and they had reached out a while. They were excited to have somebody from professional services. You know, I was chartered, I had my GPHR, I had my CIPM, you know, I'd worked in KPMG. They were excited to have me. I wasn't so excited, so I sort of like delayed. Finally, after about 4 months, I moved. The salary was good, you know, it was what I wanted. And even though the location wasn't what I wanted, because I'd gotten another job before then, but I decided to move because I knew that if I kept on staying, guess what? If I kept on staying, I would likely not get the other opportunities, because I just needed to move to a supervisory level at that time. And I moved in December. In February, I was out of that. In March, I was out of that place. So in February, I gave my resignation because just within the 3 months that I moved, I got an offer, a managerial role. And I would not have gotten that level if I had moved from the professional services I was at the level. Because they're going to be saying, oh, this is the level you were before. You know, so they considered what I was already earning. They considered the responsibilities I had, even though it was just for a few months. And then they gave me the opportunity based on what I could also, give back to them during the interview process. So if you look at everything, while there was a career path, you know, I needed to consider my discipline. I needed to consider what the path, but it was also critical for me to consider what the pyramid was. At that point, over 5 years in HR, having a local and international certification, I knew that I was ready. So it wasn't like I was jump-starting the process. I was ready for the next level. Yes, I may not have thought that I was ready for a very, very senior level, but I knew that I was ready for a manager level. So having moved, it gave me that platform. And so the question is, where are you? Where are you on your career journey? And then the organization where you are, what are your options? So again, it doesn't mean that every time there's no option for you to move up, then the next thing is to move up. Not necessarily. Because at that point, listen, I had done audits. I had done consulting where I trained clients and I've recruited for clients. I have done in-house HR. I've moved within HR as a business partner, doing recruitment and managing the biggest business unit, which was audit. In a year, I recruited over 100 people into the audit business alone and targeted, I was targeting best I can and all that. And, got a lot of recommendation from the business unit. We had, at that point, I'd moved into the learning team, maybe not done a bit of performance management so I'd sort of moved around. I knew that I'd built my capacity, built my knowledge of HR, and I wanted a place where I could, put it out there in a more senior level. But the question now is, yes, there was no space, but I was ready. So even if there's no space you might just need to spend a bit more time, a bit more time to grow laterally. Look for opportunities outside your core area. Just grow a rich experience such that by the time you are ready for a more senior role, you are able to bring a lot more to bear. You don't want to go into a leadership role or a supervisory role, and then you are just one area. It's just one area that you're good. You want to grow. Many times, lateral growth helps you to grow deep. It's not only when you grow upward. Sometimes as you're growing laterally, you are building capacity. It's just like generally saying, as you are growing wide, you are getting wide in your experiences, and by the time you are ready to move, it's a jump. By the time you are ready to move, you are moving, and then you are so fast. Imagine getting to an organization and the speed at which you move. So by the time you take time to grow, when you are ready to move, you are able to move faster. But then there are also other factors about the culture of the environment. I'm not going to say you should stay back in a toxic environment because, Victoria, the HR consultant, has said that I need to grow, I need to stay where I am. No, not necessarily. So if it's a toxic environment, if it's not a place where you see yourself growing, then it might be time to move. The other factor I want you to consider is what's your positioning. Again, this is extremely key. What's your positioning? This might not matter so much, for the younger professionals, but for experienced professionals, this is very, very critical. So if you're in a situation where you are in management level and just waiting to break into the senior management level, and when I say senior management, I mean the top leadership, at that point, you know what your positioning is. Do you have sponsors? These are the times where the soft skills matter. So there are a lot of things that you consider. The first is, what's my positioning? The 5 of us, if a selection will be made, even though, and again, that is not only dependent on your technical abilities. A number of times those things might not necessarily be dependent on your technical abilities. There's a lot more. The relationships you build, the business that you can bring in, your general, the way you've been seen over time, the impact you have made, who you know. These things are the soft skill areas that go a long way. So as a senior professional, at this time, you're asking yourself, if I stay, am I only going to stay just to work up to retirement, or do I want to stay because I want to be in leadership? How do I see myself? Do I see myself as a senior management professional? Do I want to retire as just a second fiddle? Or do I have an opportunity to go and do something really big elsewhere? So again, it's critical. Who are your mentors? Who are your sponsors? And who is speaking for you when you're not there? If they're going to close, if the CEO is going to just identify people, are you going to be one of them? And before you let me say this, just like I said, when I said the decisions you make in your career should not just be about the immediate, look at the entire span of your career. So if you replay this, to as a senior professional, it is not at that point of 15 years, 20 years, 25 years experience that you begin to ask yourself, I am not the chosen one. You should have started working this from years before now. And for some persons, it might just be, this is the environment I want to stay. So there's some brands. If you look at some brands, I don't want to mention brands for obvious reasons, but there's some known brands that by the time you see people who have been appointed to certain roles, go check them. They've spent 20 years. For some people, it's their culture. And so when you go into a place, you need to understand the smell of the place. How does the place smell? What's their smell? What's important? What's their culture? What has been it? Look at the CEO. Look at the HR director. Look at the finance director. Look at the CEO. What's the antecedent? How long have they been in the organization? Is this an organization I want to grow? And then if this is it, what's the template like? So even when there's no written code, there's an unwritten code everywhere. What is it like? And then if they're going to be recruiting people from outside, what's the specs? Again, we talked about one of the things I didn't say so much when I was talking about the masters was the question of, should I do a master's locally or I should do international? And I will always say it, even though my MBA, I did it in the Lagos Business School, I will say it anywhere. If you have the funding, and I don't mean just any school, if you have the funding and you could go to a recognized international institution, my advice will be for you to do so. If you have the funding, you have everything that it takes, my advice would be to do so, because we are in an environment where when you have an international certificate or degree, it sort of gives you an edge. Again, like I said earlier, not necessarily at your entry level, but as you grow. I was telling somebody recently, check out the nominations or the appointments that we have in the country. I mean the ministerial or the appointments to lead one parastatal or one body or the other. Look at them. Look at their profiles. If they did not do their MBA or their MSc from somewhere, there's one certification from Harvard. There's always something added. And maybe the few that might be LBS, and I'm not saying that 100%, but the most times you have something that's an additional, something international from a reputable school, and a lot of times a lot of funding. It's just that many times we don't go and do research for this funding. So let me go back to my question. I just wanted to quickly touch on that. Should I do local or should I do international? The other question you ask yourself in making a move is, what's the industry of the future? Because sometimes when you make a move, it is not necessarily, you don't make a move all the time into your same industry. And so while you might be in a particular field, your industry might be different. And so I might be doing again, please, I'm going to be using a lot of human resources. I started in professional services, human resources, moved into FMCG, and then moved into oil and gas. Still the same human resources, but moved into different fields. And so the question is, while you are making your move beyond the salary, beyond the senior position, the question is, what's the industry of the future? The industry that I work in, the new world of work, the future of work has come. COVID has accelerated this. What's the fate of where I am? Again, mindful that your career decision should span the entire length of your career. What's happening in this industry that you're working in? In the next 5 years, will that industry still be in existence? In the next 10 years, how relevant will what you're doing be? And then even beyond the industry, in your area of work, what are the key things that is going to be leading that area of work in the future? So currently you have so somebody who's doing maybe customer service, customer service, and you're thinking, how can I bring in IT into customer service? What are the analytics that I need to do? Still customer service, but from the analytics part of it. Still human resources, but from the business analytics part of it. What are the careers of the future? While I'm not generally changing completely, it doesn't mean that if I'm an L&D professional and then I abandon L&D, what it can mean for me is that I expand my horizon. I begin to think, what are the other areas of work? What are the other experiences I can begin to garner now? And mind you, you do not need to move before you get those experiences. So where you are, volunteer, ask for projects, ask to be on projects, ask to participate in assignments that will just help you to build. Because if I'm going to be reviewing your profile, many times it's not only the core experiences that you have gotten that helps you to move. So when you want to move into another industry, you don't just move from, I haven't done the IT related part of this, my work before, and I just want to move. And I'm going to be asking, the employer will not just take you because you have done work before. Every employer will ask themselves a question first: what's in it for us? So the experiences you get on projects, the experiences you get from volunteering, you put them together and you showcase the impact you have been able to make. And so as you ask those questions, questions around, is my current industry, is my current career a career of the future? If it is a career of the future, what aspect of my career is going to sustain me in the future? What are the skills I need to learn? Are there things that I can begin to learn now? Are there things I can begin to learn on the side? Are there certifications I can begin to build so that as I widen my capabilities and I widen my knowledge, I can be better prepared for better opportunities when I decide to move? And then I talked about lateral growth, that it is critical, very, very important that you seek opportunities for lateral growth. I'm going to at this point ask again that you, for those of you who are yet to follow Victoria Ibawa, please quickly do follow. My colleagues online are going to be posting my handle, and then also Inspired for Impact handle. Do feel free to follow, and then please also feel free to go there, post in your comments on the session. There's my very last post is the poster of this session. Let me know what are the key things that you got from this session. We are not through yet. I have one major topic to still answer while I check what are the things that are being written here. If there are comments or questions, I would see them. The other thing I would like to hear from you is any question, any area that you want us to take in this monthly IG session. So if there's any area that you think that is a gray area, especially if it's a career related area that you want me to address in this, please put it there. Let me know two things. One, how you thought the session is going, and number two, what areas you want me to focus on. And then let me go to my third question. Please, again, if there's anything in the last two questions that you think I haven't handled, please feel free to put a comment. I really want to see your questions or your comments so that I will really, I want to break them down as much as I can. So I'm going to go to the last question, and this is the big one. A lot of people have reached out. In fact, people ask me a lot of questions. So there's a question, is Victoria, what should I do? And some people will be like, Victoria, So there was a senior professional who had gone to run a session for his organization. He runs his business, and so through a consultant, the consultant needed to take a HR part of it, and then I was invited to just run it. It was a public holiday, just one topic, and so he reached out to me recently. I said, Victoria, hello. I know he's on WhatsApp. You don't know who is still in the country or not. So he said, are you still here? I want to know if you are still here, because every professional like you has left. You understand? I was like, oh, I'm here, and we laughed about it, but that's the reality. That's the reality. And so you turn around, where I live, a lot of people are relocating, office, the people who are not relocated, depending on what you do. So people who seem to get good jobs, either the spouse has left, and then the person with a good job decides to stay. Let's see how things pan out. You see a lot of those things happening. And then you're at that point in your career where somebody said, what if doing business will give you more gain than joining a master's degree? Someone asked that earlier. Okay, I'm going to note that. Please, you help me post it again after this third question, because it's not really related. Okay, so to stay or to japa, people are asking those questions. Everybody is moving. It's almost like everybody, you that you're not moving, you don't know what you're doing, and then people who seem to even be doing so well, they're moving. And so when people ask those questions, and even when people don't ask, I do ask the questions. And the first question I'll ask is this: what's your why? What's your why? What's your why? Because a lot of people, move, and they don't tell you what they go through. So the first question is, what's your why? Why are you moving? If the fundamental thing is about having a better life, when I say better life, which maybe for many people that is why. If it's about having a better life of maybe more money, if you look at the economy, again, I said at the beginning that we're starting at, using Nigeria as a base. Many times you get a lot of foreigners coming in while Nigerians are going out. And what they will always tell you is that Nigerians do not know the value of the richness of the population that we have. That's what they will say. Many Nigerians will not tell you the value, the richness. So will I say don't go? No, that's not what I'm saying. The essence of this session, like I said when we were doing the advert, is to just highlight things that you need to consider when you want to take decisions. And the first question is, what's your why? Recently, one of my mentors, my pastor, my coach, said something, and he said, when you want to see somebody who knows what he's doing, you should be able to answer the why question up to the seventh why. Okay, so why are you considering relocating? I think it's the best time to relocate. Why is it the best time to relocate? The stage I'm in my career. Why do you think the stage I'm in my career? So by the time you are able to answer the 7 why, so from one why to the other, and I don't mean flimsy answers or answers that are not, answers that lack depth or answers that lack meaning. By the time you are on your own, take your book and ask yourself the question, why am I moving? Why am I even considering moving? Answer the first why. And then when you answer the first why, take the second one, answer for the 7th why. Then you're able to reflect again and say, do these make sense? Listen, we hear of a lot of Nigerians. We have a lot of Nigerians who are out there, doing well. There are also a lot of Nigerians. Back in the days when we were growing, we used to hear of people who come to Nigeria and they will say, is dead body in the mortuary that they are going to wash. and then there are Nigerians who go there and they really do well. There are people who've decided as they're going, I'm going to go for my master's, I'm going to go for my PhD. All things being equal, I get a job. If I do not get a job or get what I want, Nigeria is not sending me away. There are people who also at that point that I say, you know what, I'm selling off everything. I've heard people say to themselves, I don't want to have anything back here so that nothing will bring me down. Exactly. Somebody just said here that it all boils down to individual for your why. Don't do things because everybody is doing it. And again, your why also brings you down to timing. Your why brings you down to timing. Moving at certain times might not favor some individuals as moving at a particular time will favor some individuals. And I'm going to be talking about the most critical factor, the most critical question you need to ask. And at the end, that's going to be my last comment. And so the first thing is your why. Your why is different from my why. You need to first understand. When it was locked down, I ran a session on Zoom, and the session I ran was don't miss the boss. The session I ran on Zoom during the lockdown, the first session before I developed the program on thriving during and post COVID, I developed that. But the first session I developed was don't miss the boss. There are a lot of changes, don't miss it. But then, you might be thinking, oh, Victoria, back then you said don't miss the boss. The question is, are you on the right boss? Are you taking the right boss? What's your why? Is this where you should even be? Are you convinced that this is the next step you are taking? Let's even assume that you have decided, yes, relocation, moving is for me. Why is the reason? Your why might be for academic reasons. Your why might be for job reasons. What if it doesn't happen in the next 3-5 years? What's the plan that you have? I don't want to jump the gun yet. There's some other things I will say. But the next thing, is what do you have to offer? A lot of people are moving. I can tell you that many people are moving, doing the masters. But how many people, the economies that are taking people every time, everybody going for masters in a particular location, they need the money. You are paying for your masters, But the question is, what do you have to offer? Again, I talked about timing. As you've stayed, the time you're ready, assuming you decide, okay, it's time for me to move, what skills have you developed? What is it? What if I don't get a job in my field of, what else do I have to offer? What are the skills that are relevant in that environment? What are the skills that I can put into practice that would ensure that I am not just doing manual jobs? Because while it might not be an environment, depending on your country that you want to go to, it might not be an environment where your job, usually organized countries will have minimum wages, so it doesn't necessarily matter the kind of job that you do. In the long run, it might matter because exactly. So because why it would matter, especially if you're a career-driven person who has goals to say, this is where I want to get to for self-satisfaction. Just that self-contentment. It's not only about the money that you earn. There's the bit of I have gotten to the peak of my career. This is what I want to achieve and I have achieved it. So while the minimum wage might be there, what are the prospects in the next 5 years? What are the prospects in the next 5 years? How old are you now? I talked about what is the skills, what do you have to offer? But exactly, what beyond what you can offer, what can you learn at this age? Do you understand? And then your age should also determine the kind of opportunities you are looking out for. Again, because I'm talking mostly to career persons, I'm going to also say this. What are the conversion requirements? Many times the areas you've built a career, you have built a very strong career. You have built your profile. You have done so well for yourself, and then you go to an environment where the entire certifications that you have is not more relevant. It's not relevant. You can't use it. So it means that you have to start all over again. Have you considered what the requirements are? Do you need to move immediately, or do you want to take the next 2-3 years to begin to build the right foundation so that it is easier? Again, depending on the age. Have you considered the different factors? Have you considered other factors? And again, I want to ask this question. What is your backup plan? Like I said before, some people say that relocation is the backup plan, but even the relocation has to have a backup plan. What are you doing? How did you leave? People are leaving and they're not even resigning properly. People are leaving, and then the next thing you will see that, they have just gone, because you never know What if you go and you decide after 2-3 years, this isn't for me? Because the fact that people are moving doesn't mean that you will move and you realize, yes, this is it. There are a lot of people who have moved who want to come back, but they don't want to come back because of, obviously, for some obvious reasons. Either they feel the economy is just not worth it, or, oh, how will I come back? You know, what face will I use to face people everybody knew that have relocated? Maybe something better. You know, what's the backup plan that you have? It's again, I talk about the skills. What sort of funding, what sort of investment have you built over time, such that as you look again, as you begin to face those experiences, as you face your studies, you have something that is working for you in the country. People move and they have things working for them, income coming in. What have you built? And I'm going to say this, if you did not get anything from this session, the most important thing you should get from this session is that every career decision you will take now, every career decision you will take now, whatever stage of your career, should be based on your entire career. And so even if you are gathering everything to move, have it at the back of your mind. I should have something. It doesn't mean that you must. There are people who cut all ties, you know, just because they want to move, cut everything, and then they move. And then when it is time to call for backup or for help, then there's nobody. You don't have any backup. You don't have any help. You don't have any investment that you can fall back on. You know, or you don't have the right connections. A friend of mine told me recently, not necessarily recently, last year, she told me about how they moved, and she said something, and maybe this is for those that have decided to move. You know, I was asking her, but what about all what we hear, you know, about people struggling, professionals going? And she said, Victoria, a lot of things matter. The first thing she said, it depends on, you know, what your own plans are. And then she said, depends on your relationships. The people that you decide to follow. Listen, somebody just posted here, the narrative is different when you experience the other side. You know, so some of the persons on this call are some friends that are not, a lot of people on this call that are not even in Nigeria. Some persons not in Nigeria. And when people have seen the other side, it's just that, except you have somebody who is very open to share with you the ups and downs. And that's why it's important that you see that the scripture says, who builds a house without first sitting down and counting the cost? When you make a relocation, listen, for those who haven't considered it, relocation goes beyond you. Every decision you make, especially when you are moving, it's a generational decision. Because it impacts your family, it impacts your children, it impacts their children. So as much as there's the opportunities, there are also other things for you to consider. There's the opportunity of employment, there's opportunity of lifestyle, but there's also the factor of being treated many times, you know, as second-class citizen. No matter the impact, it will take a lot to break through that. But then you will ask me, but Victoria, isn't that good enough? You know, it depends on your why. Really depends on your why. There are a lot of professionals that I see, you know, relocating businesses, but they already make so much impact in the country that you don't even know where they are, whether they're in London today, in Nigeria, or in the US, because they built the profile over time. And so it's important that you know your own peculiar situation, the person you are looking to. Let me go back to what my friend said. She said, when you want to move, the relationship, the kind of people you connect with matter. The people who have done the right thing, not the people who just want to do anything to make ends meet. And they go there, they say this is where they're doing the manual jobs. They rush there. They say this is where they're doing. It might not be easy. It might be easier for those who already have some form of investment. So if you don't have anything, you can't be deciding, this is what I will do, not what I will do. I had a friend who, you know, moved into HR and went for a master's, you know. She was able to be selective. Why was she selective? She had worked over 10 years, saved enough money, went for a master's in one of the best schools in the UK, made a first class for a master's. Why was she be able to concentrate? Two things happened to her. She was selective about the jobs because she had a backing. You know, she had a backup plan. Whatever happens, I have, you know, I built my profile over years, and then I already have saved to an extent. So she wasn't doing what everybody was doing, just doing one job or the other. She was particular about getting some sort of office jobs where that might not pay so much, but will help her build her experience. So it depends really on where you are, what your why is, what your backup plan is. Am I saying that everybody will have a backup plan? Maybe not. But again, that backup plan, your age is a critical factor. What you will do as a young graduate of 23, 24, who doesn't have responsibility as the whole world, at his or her feet, or even as a parent, to just snap his or her fingers at and they come to his or her rescue. It's not the same thing as somebody who has responsibilities, who has a family. So the things that you need to consider. And then the other question I always ask people is, ask yourself, is relocation for me? Is relocation for me? What's your place? Have you considered other means of achieving? Somebody said, what about those of us who are old? Have you considered other means of achieving what you want? Have you considered getting an international job, applying from Nigeria and getting the job, rather than going and just, doing all sorts just because you want to get your stay? Have you considered working remotely? COVID came and opened up the doors to so many opportunities. There are a lot of remote jobs. You can be in Nigeria earning in foreign currency. You can build that the portfolio that you need to build, such that you are able to earn anywhere. And by the time you put in so much, you can move at any time. Have you considered the academic route? You've done your masters, depending on what your retirement plan is. So if you have a retirement plan to be a lecturer, you might just want to decide, I've done other certifications or my masters in Nigeria, and then my PhD, for obvious reasons, just to give me an edge, I want to do that. That can also be an opening. So, and if you want to do that, what it means is that you might need to take time to do some reflections. What's my why? What are the skills that I have? What's the backup plan? What are the funding opportunities that I have? So that you have, something that will support you while you go. What else can I do? Can I go through the masters? Can I do my PhD? How does this impact my children? How does this impact my family? What are the considerations that you've considered? Have you considered the odds? Because, let me say this, countries that are looking for people to come, as much as the borders are open, everybody's going to Australia, Canada, the UK, as much as they're open, the first consideration, just like your employer, will always be what's in need for us. So while they would embrace you, the most important consideration for them is their own, what's in need for them. Are there opportunities? Yes. Am I saying do not go? No. I have seen people who have gone and the doors have opened, their lives have transformed within 2-3 years, and they have told me, Victoria, if I had stayed back, I wouldn't be where I am. And I've also seen people who did their master's, PhD, and had to come back, and they're doing way better where they are. So the question is relocation for me? I'm going to be wrapping this, I'm going to be wrapping this up. And so while I say that age matters, which I have seen a lot of people put here, age matters, it doesn't mean that you still can't take a decision. Because what it only means is that you now need to look at what are the options for you. What are the options for you? Do I really need to move, or do I get an international job such that whatever I want to do, or do I go through this particular route? Don't be fixated on this is what everybody is doing. What's the timing? And somebody also put here, exactly, very critical. Somebody was sharing, I joined a platform 2 days ago, and somebody was sharing a testimony, almost crying, and she was saying, I had a refugee status. People who will be hiding in a country. You don't want to do all that as a career professional, because you never know. There are decisions, there are things people say. There are a lot of people living out there and living in a place where, with a status that has completely impacted their career for life, because they are living illegally. And it's not where you are, not in a country where you think there are no records. Because there are records, people will do all sorts. Whatever you do, it should be legal. It should be legal, not that you just want to do everything. Because as much as you pray, God has a purpose for everybody. And one of the things I wrote here, and which I started with really, is that in the end, life is about decisions. So whether the decision is, should I go for my master's, or I should stay? Should I do an international master's, or I should do a local one? Should I get some work experience, or I should immediately go to school? Should I stay with my employer, or I should move to another employer? There's a lot. And see, somebody else asked me a question. I'm going to take that. I'll try and take that question. So when you ask those questions, everything about life is about decision. Everything, whether you decide to stay or decide to leave, there's a decision you are taking. But then the question I will ask, as we begin to wrap this up, is this: are you on the right bus? If you've decided that this is what I want to do, timing is key. Your age is key. But the most important is this: are you on the right bus? And that's what brings me to the most important aspect, and that's the God factor. Because it's God that knows your end from your beginning. He knows the right timing for you. He knows the focus he has for you. He knows the assignment. Many times, when they say what you are looking for in Sokoto is in your Sokoto, depending on it, there are people today locally who have global platforms that wherever they want to be, the opportunities are there, the platforms are there, people are willing for them to come. But it's about timing. And then if it is time for you to move, do it the right way. Ask those questions so that you don't go and you are stranded career-wise. You don't want to go to a place and then you are starting from ground zero, even if you have to start from ground zero, but with the right incentives, with the right platforms, with the right mindset, with the right relationships. Again, I'm going to stress this. The most important factor is the God factor. What is God saying? What's the path for me? Somebody asked me when I was sharing a personal plan, some personal plans in terms of my education with somebody, and the person was like, "Oh, why didn't you do this before now?" And I said, "You know what? I don't have any regrets, because I know that the career path my life has taken has been God. God has taken me through a process, and that process, everything is culminating into where I am today." And so my question for you is: are you following that process, or you are jumping it so that you get the best? Remember what I said when we started, that there are experiences that we will never have because of one or two decisions that we take. And the truth is, you can never know except you are in tune with God. Somebody posted recently on Instagram and on LinkedIn. The person was sharing a story of how he moved and the impact it has made. And another person responded with how the movement did not favor him. That he looked at his secondary school mates. All of them are CEOs, the people at his level. That yes, he's been, in the US, he's doing well, just okay. But averagely, most of his colleagues, and many of them had the opportunities to school abroad, and then they were able to come back depending on the opportunities they got. And they're doing well. A lot of people countered what he said, but that only goes to prove that everybody has a unique situation. There's no one size fits all, and most importantly, your career is like that. Your career goes beyond you. Please, let's note this. Your career goes beyond you. The career decisions you take impact your spouse, impact your children, impact your generation. And for those of you who are God-minded, your career should not be at variance with God's assignment over your life. Your career should not be at variance. I feel the need to stress this here. If there's an assignment of God over your life, God makes it happen such that everything fuses together. And because God is one who listens, He's always waiting for us to ask Him. You know how God speaks to you. There's a unique way. If whatever way God speaks to you, listen. If you're somebody who needs to put the fleece before God, God, should I do this? Give me a sign. Do it. Hear Him for yourself. Do your own plan. Write out what's in need for me. What do I have? Why? What's my why? What are the other options to get what I want? Is it dual citizenship for my children? Fine. Is there any other option such that I'm able to keep my good job and then do this while at the same time it might take me a longer time, but then I'm still achieving that same dual citizenship? But the problem is many people are not even asking why. Everybody's moving and moving and moving, then you go and do all sorts because you have not really sat down to say, why do I want to move? Is it for economic reasons? Then what are my options? Is it for career reasons? What are my options? Is it for my children? What are my options? And then if it's about the children, it should not be so much for the children such that the basic, the fundamental of your marriage, is impacted for a long time. Yes, for a short time, there might be one or two need for you to go to school, do something, but it should not be on a permanent basis that there's a separation, because the same children that you are building that platform for should not be growing in a separated home. I do not want to digress so much, but somebody asked a question earlier. Let me quickly take that question. Please, this is the time to drop your question. Yes, somebody said everybody, story no be the same. Your career goes beyond you. Exactly. Your career goes towards your retirement, beyond you, the lives that are around you, generations through you and around you that God has called you to impact. And I want to quickly take this question. I'm looking for that question again. Somebody talked about somebody said his backup plan. I can't see that question. I don't know if somebody can help me drop it. What if doing business will give you more money than doing a master's degree? So it depends. It really depends. So I have business professionals, that have their masters. And I have a close friend, he's a business person, has his master's. We were discussing and he said, I'm still going to do my PhD. I always tell people, if there's nothing to lose, so yes, I saw that. There's nothing really to lose. My point will always be, do your masters. Whether you're a business person, what it means is that you might not now be doing it at the pace at a career person who needs it to move on, depending on the field of the person. But just do it as an edge. You never know. You never know what appointment you'll be considered for. You never know what funding having your additional degree. Because many times the mistake we make again is that we only look at the now. Look at the next 10 years. Look at the global platforms. Imagine somebody, a business person, putting for something and somebody else has a certification from Harvard, and then both of you are putting in for the same thing. Even if the Harvard certification doesn't impact the delivery of the work, the chances are that there'll be a soft spot for that additional qualification that the person has. So what I would say is, while it might not be so critical, the master's degree, if you want to do a business as a backup plan, well, by all means, go ahead. But in the midst of that, find a way to grow your knowledge, because the knowledge is the currency, is actually the most important currency. So you can spend the money from the business, but your knowledge that you have gained remains with you. So I am not saying do masters and not, do masters, leave your business. It's about timing. Again, it goes back to what I said before about what's your why and what's your timing. A lot of factors that we have heard. Let me say this before I wrap up quickly. If you are yet to follow me, please go back. If I can ask one of the team members to drop my handle here, quickly go follow. We're going to be doing this every month, and such that when you have any question, I can just decide to just drop a short video and answer questions that come to me during the course of the week. It doesn't have to be every month. I can decide to drop a write-up, but just follow my handle. Also follow Inspired for Impact. And please, I want to see you put here how the session has gone, both here and also go to the post where you have the flyer for this, my very last post, and please do comment on how impactful you felt this session went. And so in conclusion, I'm just going to say a few things that I have stressed before. Everything you do is a decision. Whether you're moving or you're growing, you're enlarging, you're expanding your skills, you're researching what's happening in the future, your discipline of the future, how relevant your career will be, how relevant the impact you're making. It's a decision. It's a choice, and you're making a decision. And then the other thing is that every person's situation is different. Please do not follow everybody hook, line, and sinker. Everybody's situation is different. Your situation is peculiar. Your family situation, your career situation, your economic situation, your financial situation, everything that you have is different. So it's important to ask your why. Why am I doing this? What's in it for me? What's the platform that I have? What's my backup plan? What is the relationships that I've built? What can help me? And in deciding whether to stay or not, I talked about the different levels of your career. If you're an entry level, the kind of factors differ significantly for very senior professionals who at that point are asking, yes, I've done 15 years, I've done 20 years. Am I really going to have a seat at the table? Am I one of the people to be considered? And if I'm not, do I have enough time to build that consideration for me? Or will it be too close to retirement so that I want to go out and do something else? So there's a lot of factors. But the most important factor is the God factor. What is God saying? Do you have a relationship with him such that you know what he wants you to do? Do you have a relationship with him? Can you hear him? Can you feel him? How does God speak to you? How does God speak to you? What is he saying? Has he shown you your children's future? Has he told you where they will be? Again, I will say you this. It's always good. And I didn't say this. If you want to do anything you want to do, the opportunities you can get that can give your children a dual citizenship, by all means, it's always an advantage. And I'm saying that from the point of view of a HR professional. It's always an advantage. But the truth is that every one of us will have that advantages at different parts in our life, at different times in our life. Don't do things illegally to get that advantage, So when it is time, you will know. And then even if it is time now, there are different options that you can go through. So seek professional advice. But please do not lose focus of the fact that you're a career person and your career goes beyond you. Your career transcends, the impact of your career transcends the time of your career. I want to say thank you for joining. Again, do not forget to go back, to that post. Please drop your comments. Let me know how the session was. And if you have topics you want me to address, please feel free to also drop it there. Just chat with me. I'm going to address those topics. Again, thank you for coming. We see again this time next month, last Sunday of the month, 7 p.m. God bless you. Thank you.